Hello once again. As we continue our study with the book of Genesis, we now come to the second half of the book. And at this time, we're going to look at several chapters, 25, 26, 27, and 28. And we're really looking at the story of Isaac up until the time when Jacob flees and leaves the land of promise. So we begin with the question, will Isaac and Rebekah have children? And by the time it ends, we have to wonder whether or not Jacob, who is the blessed son, is going to ever come back again. The story begins, as many sections in Genesis do, with a listing of some of the family members. And we notice that, first of all, here we have the story of the family of Ishmael. A lot of times when people begin to study the Bible and open the book of Genesis, they get kind of puzzled with all the names and why all those names are there. But in the ancient world, the names were very, very important. They didn't have phone books and they didn't have genealogies listed, but very often the names of some of those ancient people were connected with cities. For example, the name Kedar, which is one of the sons of Ishmael, is a well-known region south and east of the land of Israel. And so we have these names mentioned, Ishmael and his family, and first of all his sons, and then later when Esau takes one of the daughters of Ishmael as wife to try to placate his parents, then we find reference to the oldest son, Nebaioth, again. So first of all, we have the genealogy. In Hebrew, that word is toledot, from the word for generations, those who had been born to someone. And remember from other parts of the Bible that a person would say that I would be remembered through my generations. There would be an ongoing existence at this time, not in terms of living forever or going to heaven. We don't see anything mentioned about that. But if a person had lived a righteous kind of life, they would then assume that their children and grandchildren would continue to tell the stories about who they were and what they had done. Oddly enough, the book of Genesis doesn't say as much about what they had done that was a blessing, but either what God had done for them or what they had done that was actually a curse. So we first of all have Ishmael traveling to the east and disappearing from the scene. And very often when you've got that name listed, the names are listed and then they travel away. And then we turn to the story of Isaac and Rebekah. What I had tried to figure out and state last time, and did not do it very well, was that Isaac would have been 37 years old when his mother Sarah died. She died at age 127 and had borne him when she was 90 years old, so he would have been 37, and now it's when he is 40 years old, which is kind of a rough number. We'll notice that number 40 very often, but here he is 40 years old when Rebekah is brought to him, according to the story that we just studied last time. And you'll note by the end of this chapter that he was 60 when Rebekah had children. So Sarah had to wait for 25 years before she could bear children, and now even though Rebekah is much younger, she also goes 20 years before she has any children at all. So there is still a question about whether or not the promise will go on and how the promise will go on through Isaac and Rebekah. When Isaac and Rebekah are waiting to have children, then we have the whole dilemma of the fact that they are twins and that they are fighting already in the womb. They were just very active in the womb together. And I must admit, I've never talked to anyone who had twins to ask about what the pregnancy was like. I've never really discussed that, so I don't know if that's a kind of a common thing that the children are moving around. After a while, I'm sure toward the end of the pregnancy they couldn't. But God says somehow to Rebekah that this is because there are two whole different nations, two whole different groups. And again, the question is, if you have more than one child, which one is the child of promise? Which one is the one through whom those blessings are going to come? Obviously, our whole story of the Bible is that the promise comes through Jacob, or Israel, as he is also named, and thus we have to figure out, how do we get Esau out of the picture, even though Esau is the firstborn, just like Ishmael, the firstborn to Abraham, even though not by Sarah, is moved off to the side. Well, as the story develops, then we find that as they grow up, that, well, maybe we should talk first of all about the story of the move of Isaac and the lie of Isaac about Rebekah. because what we have now is another story in this section that talks about Isaac having lied about his wife being his sister. He goes to this Abimelech, the king of Gerar, once again, and as he goes to this Abimelech, king of Gerar, this is the same name, at least, and the same location where Abraham had gone. Uh, we wonder whether this might not be a title, that the word Abimelech, which means my father is king, might not be a kind of a title, like the word Pharaoh, so that it might be a different relative, but the same region. Well, anyway, as Isaac has been now discussing this whole business about who his wife and his sister are with the king, the first thing that the king says is, "Well, you've lied to me, and if you had not told me the truth and I didn't find it out, we might have sinned. We might have incurred guilt." This doesn't mean that he's got a set of 10 commandments that the king is going by, but there was very definitely a kind of a custom that one would obviously not take the wife of someone else, and even in the ancient world, the idea of bringing guilt upon oneself, of going beyond the boundaries of what was permissible, was seen as something that would have very definite effects in terms of whatever deity someone was worshiping. The powers of wickedness and the powers and the consequences of sin were seen as built into the act, even if they didn't have a personal God that they were looking to. We must remember in this era that we're not talking about gods who are moral. We often think of the word God and we think of the 10 commandments, the 10 words, and what's right and wrong. But in the ancient world, the idea of a deity was much more some power, whether it would be the sun or the moon, that would give regularity to life and be regular in their appearance, or whether it would be the threat of the storm god, or whether it would be the god of grain who would make the crops grow. And the people were not really thinking of the deities in terms of guidelines for daily living. In that way, the Lord was very, very different when he gave these instructions to the people of Israel, when he gave them the promise of the covenant at Mount Sinai. So these gods might not have punished people. That was just not in their way of thinking. But they did believe that what you sowed, you reaped, and so you could bring guilt on yourself. It's very interesting, though, that by the end of this story, we're going to find that Abimelech and Phicol, the commander, these people, they want Isaac actually to be kind of close. So at first, Isaac comes, and as he is there, this is the only independent story that we have about Isaac. As Isaac is there, then he lies, but they let him stay kind of close by at first. And they're saying, okay, well, you can stay among us, that's okay. Well, when he bears, or when the crops come forth, then we find out that he has as much as 100-fold. Well, that was just unheard of. Even today, a very good crop of grain, which is what's grown down in that region, might be 40-fold, but here 100-fold. Now, what is that saying? It's saying God promises that he would bless those whom he had brought to that land. They cannot on their own make it, but he says he will bless them. So we're being told, see, the blessings are coming. All of what God had promised is coming true. Well, those who bless you I will bless, those who curse you I will curse, and through you all the nations will be blessed. Well, here the people of Gerar say, well, maybe Isaac, maybe you ought to kind of stay kind of close, because if it rains on your land, then it's going to rain on ours as well, and then we will have our grain. Well, finally, the fighting among the servants of these two groups leads them to kind of distance themselves. And if you would look on a map, you would see that the territory of Gerar is the Philistine territory, the Gaza Strip of today. And as Isaac is moving, he's moving just a little bit farther to the east all the time. And I would imagine it's something probably around maybe 30 miles inland, 20 or 30 miles inland to get to Beersheba, where he finally settles. And as he is moving, first of all, the contention with the descendants of the people from that, or the inhabitants of that land, they fill in wells, which says, go someplace else if you want to get water for your flocks. They would themselves maybe later kind of open them up, but they're trying to send him a message, you are not welcome here. So even though the rains come, he is so much more welcome wealthy than they are, that they don't like seeing the blessings on him, and they tell him go away. Well, he finally moves, and then the people of Gerar come and say, we still would like a treaty with you, and they make that treaty, and Isaac is then living in the south central part of the country at Beersheba. We see Hebron as the place where Abraham had lived. Now Beersheba, which is about 20 or 30 miles south, right at the edge of the Arabah, the desert, as where Isaac's stories are told. And then we'll watch that the Jacob stories are going to be told up farther north yet, maybe 30 miles north of Jerusalem, 60 miles north of this, at the city of Bethel, where Jacob will see that vision of the angels of God ascending and descending. So at this point then, the wells that have been filled in are now reopened, and contention about some of them until Isaac is far enough away. So they're kind of saying stay far away, but also stay close. We'd like to be in a relationship with you, but just let's not be next door neighbors. So the setting then is that Isaac and Rebekah are now living in the south central part of the country, and they found water there as well. You'll notice in the entire story that the real question is about water, and about what amounts of water the people have. Well, let's get back to the story of Esau and Jacob now, because as we get into this story about Esau and Jacob, as the story unfolds, we see that contention not only between foreigners, people of Gerar, and Isaac, but also right within his own family. Esau is a hairy man, a man who goes out hunting, a man of the field, and Jacob is a smooth man. He's not someone who's rough and ready for the world. And so each is favored by one of the parents. Isaac is favoring his son Esau, Rebekah favoring the son of the twin, moments younger, Jacob. But what about the birthright now? And what about the right of inheritance? The general setting of this is that if you were the older son, when your father died, you would get two portions. Now, if there are 5 in the family, then you'd get the property divided into 6 portions. If there are 2 in the family, it'd be divided into 3 portions. And the reason for this is at the point, at least the suggested reason, is that at the point when the father would die, the older son would be responsible to take care of his mother. He'd become the new head of the family, so he'd get a portion to take care of her and a portion for himself, and obviously whatever's left over when she dies is his. So Esau, when he comes in so hungry that he thinks he's going to die, when he says to Jacob, let me sell you my birthright, or I'll sell my birthright if you'll just give me some food, because I'm going to die anyway, he probably in the back of his mind could have had the idea, well, when my father blesses me, he can simply say, may your 1/3 that you now have, Esau, swell up and become great. And may Jacob, may that 2/3 that you stole from your brother instead of loving him and caring for him, may that shrivel to nothing. So there's still an ace in the hole that Esau thinks that he can play at this time. We note from later in the story of Genesis that Isaac actually lived at least the 20 years that Jacob was gone, because after Jacob came back, then they bury their father together, and one would assume that the boys are at least 20 years old, so Isaac was 60 at that time, and then he's going to be maybe 80 years old at the time when the problems come, and then older yet, as we will see when he finally dies. But at this point, the reasons are given in 2 different ways. First of all, there are reasons about the fight between Esau and Jacob, and the word Esau is usually connected with the name Edom, and the word Edom means red or ruddy, and the land of the Edomites to the east of the Dead Sea is very red soil. And the word Jacob actually means crooked one. It's the word for the heel of the foot, the kind of bent part of the foot. And we'll see that Jacob is the crooked one. He's always trying to get away with something. Remember, the crooks are the ones who go this way and that way to try and dodge the people who are going to try and catch them. So here he is the crooked one, and he's acting according to his name. Rebekah is in on this. She says, if your father curses you, the curse can come on me. And then Jacob goes in with the meal for his father. This is a very sacred kind of event where you prepared a meal, and then the blessing would come from that. We might think by comparison how even today, when we take part in Holy Communion, that we are being blessed. We have a meal with our God who feeds us with what He has given us, and then gives us the blessing and sends us forth. Well, as Jacob comes to receive the blessing, his mother puts Esau's clothes on him, and then extra heavy skin on the back of his neck and on his hands to give the appearance that this is Esau. Isaac, by this time, obviously has gone blind, so he has to tell by touch and by smell who it is. And we know he's not sure, because he keeps saying, "I'm not sure this is you or not." And the voice sounds like the voice of Jacob, but whether he's just not thinking or what, he takes the meal, he blesses him and says, "May you have power over all of your enemies." And obviously the Israelites later would have said, our father Isaac promised our father that we would have dominance over all the enemies, so it's okay with whatever we do. Well, immediately after this meal is done, then Esau does come in with his game, and he says, "Father, I've got the meal ready. Let's have the blessing now before you die." And then Esau is told, "Well, I'm sorry, son, but I've given all the blessings away to your brother." And the blessing, if it be that, is you're going to be living far away from settled communities, and the land of Edom is rather barren and sparse. It's now in southwestern Jordan, or western Jordan. But he is also told at the end of time, when you do break away from your brother, then you will have dominance over him. We find the descendants of the Edomites all the way down into the time of Christ, where the Idumeans, who live in the southern part of the country, are connected with the Edomites, and Herod himself is an Idumean. So there's at least a name that kind of goes all the way through for many centuries after this. Well, the other reason that is given, instead of the stealing of the birthright, for why Jacob will go back to Uncle Laban's house to get a wife, is the fact that God says, or Isaac says, and Rebekah, "Let's not have any intermarriage with the people of this country." So we know that Esau has married a couple of different young ladies from that particular region, Hittites and such, and so finally then he will marry one of the Ishmaelite daughters. But the other reason then is that Isaac sends him forth and says, "Go to your mother's home and get a family member from there. I don't have any daughters to give you a daughter of mine in marriage, so go back there." And as he goes back, then we get into the setting of the blessing at the place called Luz, which is later called Bethel, or the house of God. And we find now that that Jacob is tied with the city of Bethel. That will come up even much, much later, when the descendants of the northern tribes who will live there, the descendants of the Leah tribes, will say there's more history to be at Bethel, where we actually know our father had communication with God, than at the city of Jerusalem. And when the Leah tribes are in the south, the Rachel tribes are in the center. The descendants of Leah, or of Rachel, Manasseh and Ephraim and Benjamin, will live around that region of Bethel, whereas the descendants of the Leah tribes, Reuben and Simeon and Levi and Judah, will claim Jerusalem as the place where God causes his name to dwell. So in about the 900s, when the northern and southern kingdom split, there is tradition that will tie all the way back here to say, why would you have Bethel as the place for worship? Oddly enough, the king who sets up worship there puts up a golden calf, or a golden bull, that is then what is said to lead the people astray. So some of the stories we're beginning now are going to unfold hundreds of years later, as we look at the story of Israel and the northern and southern tribes, the descendants of Jacob, and as we also look at stories about the Edomites. And just for reference, one of the major sections of the problem that Israel had with the Edomites was when the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem, and the Edomites, who are called brothers even hundreds of years later, turned all of those who were fleeing from Jerusalem, fleeing from the Babylonians, turned them back to Nebuchadnezzar. So back to this story now. We have Jacob having stolen the birthright, or bought the birthright and stolen the blessing, and now he is fleeing. And the question really comes up, is this man, this young man, going to be blessed by God or not? Will God overcome this stolen blessing or will he not? Who's going to be the heir? Who's going to be the one who follows after and inherits all of the father's property, the double portion, and thus becomes the new head of the family? Well, as Jacob is fleeing, he lays down at what was probably a sanctuary. In the days when they don't have Ramada inns all over the place, what would you do if you were traveling? Where would you go if you were trying to travel someplace? Well, where the people would go is they would go to a worship site. And one would assume that this was a worship site and that he is laying there on the ground. A very common thing actually in the ancient world, that if you were a righteous person, you would go to a sanctuary and people would leave you alone there. And the old tradition back in the ancient world was if you survived the night there, then your God was saying he was blessing you. They actually call that incubation, incubacion, where you incubate yourself. You put yourself in that care of that sanctuary during the night, and either you're dead in the morning or you're preserved and you can go on. So during this time, Jacob is sleeping there, and then he sees this vision of the ascending and descending angels of God, and the promise that comes to him that he will someday come back to that place. We'll notice at the very end of the story that he says, if indeed God keeps his promise to me, then I will come back here and I will give a tenth of everything that I own to the God who has blessed me. And so now for the second time already, we find this very ancient idea that one would give a tithe or a tenth. First of all, with Abraham, who tithes from the whatever was recovered at the time of Sodom and Gomorrah when he went and saved Lot. And now here once again Jacob says, I will give a tenth of all that I have back to God and thank him for the blessings that he has given me. So Jacob now is on his way to his uncle's house. We've had a very large section of material here. And as we have looked at this, we've seen that the story of Isaac is rather short. The Abraham story went all the way from chapter 12 on through chapter 24, even into 25. And the Isaac story, now just this very small section. And from now on, we will primarily turn to the Jacob story, which will go on for quite a few chapters, and then the Joseph story. Isaac is sort of like an interim figure. He is Abraham's son when he is going to be offered, and now he really plays, except for the one with the story of Abimelech and Gerar, he plays more the role as the duped and foolish father of Jacob, and Jacob as the one who takes on the central role now. We don't have Jacob being called Israel yet, that will come later, but as we continue the story now, we find that this family history is in God's hands. God's blessings to you as you continue your study, and I pray that you will also be aware of the many promises that God is giving, where he says, my promise will be with you even though you cannot see it. That's the encouragement for us as well, not to be discouraged and grow weary when our lives don't always seem to be unfolding as we would want them to be, that God says, I will be with you and I will strengthen you. And these words to Jacob are also the words to us. God's blessings to you as you continue your study.